And right now we want to bring in Joel Rubin. He's former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and President of the Washington Strategy Group. And we're also joined by Craig Snyder, President and CEO at the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Joel, let's start with you.
It's great to be with you.
We've been talking about this whole maximum pressure campaign, economic sanctions, and the president and the White House have been rolling out layer after layer after layer of sanctions. The question is, now that they're targeting leadership and the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, will they have the desired impact, or will, as Shana just mentioned a moment ago, could they backfire? Could they make Iran even more desperate?
Yeah, Eric, this policy is driving us into continual conflict with Iran and not providing any pathways for a diplomatic solution. The danger here right now, and we've seen this over the past couple of weeks, is that the enhanced pressure on Iran, and it has been effective at creating pressure, the Trump administration's policy has, that's not moving Iran to come to a negotiation and say, we give up, we capitulate. It's actually steeled their backs more. And this is what we learned in the Obama administration, is that to put pressure on through sanctions is fine, but without a diplomatic off-ramp, there's really no gains to be had. So that's the real danger with these additional sanctions. More pressure, no off-ramp. And in fact, who are they going to talk to if they're sanctioning that individual? It's a high-risk strategy, and it's not something that historically has worked.
Craig, but unlike sanctions on the oil industry, for example, these sanctions, they target the supreme leader. They don't affect immediately the whole country of Iran, the citizens, I mean. And yet, to Eric's question, what could be the impact of humiliating maybe and targeting specifically the supreme leader of the country? Could it backfire in a sense that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard will retaliate, or maybe even the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, will gain more support politically in the country? What do you think?
It definitely is a high-risk strategy. I certainly agree with that. But there's really no way to know which way it will go. Unfortunately, there's no predictive crystal ball here. It is quite possible that it will stiffen their resolve, and particularly those elements that people like to refer to as the hardliners will use it as an excuse for additional behavior that we consider to be bad and aggressive behavior. On the other hand, sometimes pressure actually breaks one's opponent and causes them to have a different point of view. It's really hard to say. Certainly, when they say maximum, they mean it, because they're now going, as you said, after the supreme leader himself and other individual members of the Iranian regime leadership. So they're running out, the Trump administration is running out of room in terms of the sanctions strategy.
Joel, very quickly, how much weight does Russia carry in this situation? Because you have Russia saying that these sanctions are illegal.
Great question. Yeah, Russia carries a lot of weight. They're a longtime ally of Iran, and Putin has sway with Donald Trump. And they're an X factor, and if they say that they don't support these sanctions, they're not going to be alone. A lot of other countries are going to rebel against this idea because it's leading to a war. This is leading to a no-end solution right now.
Mm-hmm. Joel Rubin and Craig Snyder, stay right there. We'll keep this conversation going after a short break. All right, let's discuss it back with our panel. Joel Rubin, Washington Strategy Group President and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and Craig Snyder, he's also with us. He's President and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. Craig, I'll start with you. You know, there's so much criticism, so much skepticism around the deal of the century as a whole and this economic summit taking place in Bahrain now, especially since the Israelis and the Palestinians, both sides are not attending this economic workshop. And yet, Arab countries are attending, many of them, in fact, and also this is the first time in so many years that there is some progress on the conflict. Isn't that alone a bit encouraging? And excuse me, I'm trying to find some optimism.
Well, I think you're right. It may be a tiny, grain on a big beach, but there hasn't been any. I mean, look, the consensus of Middle East observers for many years now has been that there is no peace process, that it's effectively dead. And the idea of a Jared Kushner-led peace plan has been a punchline for a lot of people for the last 3 years. But what we're seeing here is a genuinely new approach and a genuinely new idea. Not saying it's going to work, not saying it's the right one, but it is something. And the ability to bring the Gulf states together with a willingness even to talk about it in the face of opposition from the Palestinian leadership is a significant development.
Joel, yet Jared Kushner, he did reveal aspects of this plan over the weekend, and fresh off the heels of that, you have the Palestinian Authority leader, Mahmoud Abbas, who's saying that it's destined to fail. You have Hamas leadership that's saying Palestine is not for sale. Keeping all of that in mind, it really goes to the heart of the question that we've been asking ever since we heard that a deal of the century was coming, and that it was going to be split into two different components, economic and political. Can there be any economic discussions without first addressing the political ideological divide that both sides face here? You have Hamas, which says that there can't be any talks while that don't address the end of an occupation. But the Hamas definition of the occupation is basically Israel, the Jewish state.
Yeah, Eric, this deal of the century meeting is more like a workshop of the year. There is nothing going to take place that's going to take place in Manama that is going to bridge the two sides towards a real peace deal as you're laying out. In fact, it's kind of sadly ironic that Jared Kushner is providing economic development funds to the Palestinian Authority when this administration, his recommendation, cut funds to the Palestinian Authority. And I've seen this movie before when I served at the State Department, where we would hold what we call tin cup exercises, going to other countries to essentially ask third parties, other countries, to foot the bill for our ideas. That's what this is, and it's unfortunate. It's another missed opportunity, and it's not the Palestinians' fault. And that, I think, is what we're going to hear being framed as Prime Minister Netanyahu tried to do, essentially using the line, well, they missed another opportunity. No, and that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that the Palestinians essentially are being told, take it or leave it, and they haven't even been included in this process, and there's no political dialogue taking place. That's just not a winning formula for a legitimate negotiation.